thundering of hooves could be heard in the distance, coming down the valley. But was it friendly, or was it hostile? We did not know. The pickets opened fire. The next thing we heard was the blasting of the cannons. Someone was getting more. Two arms we heard. Follow the standard. Follow it to the front. We grabbed our gear, and we marched to the sound of battle.
Hey guys, it's been a little while since we were fighting in the American Civil War, and this time we're heading out to the far west for the Battle of Glorieta Pass, sometimes known as the Gettysburg of the West. It's not a huge battle, pretty small really in the great scheme of things, but Confederate forces were moving north to try and occupy New Mexico and Arizona, and Union forces were moving south from Colorado to stop them. So in this battle, the Confederates have slightly more manpower, but on day one they start off with less. Day two was a reorganization day for both armies, and then day three the Confederates counterattacked historically. So I've tried to adjust a little bit the numbers to represent that on the table. So on day one, turn 7, the Confederates will get a regiment of infantry as reinforcements. Day 2 will be represented as just a reorganization for both armies, and then day 3 the Confederates will get 2 new regiments, and it'll be their opportunity to counterattack to try and drive back the Union forces. These maps here are from a channel on YouTube called Warhawk, where he does animated battles of the American Civil War and the American Revolution, so definitely go and check that out. It's a great channel, really good information. Confederate skirmishers versus cavalry does 2, and second unit does 2. Cavalry versus skirmishers 4 and 3. On turn 2 the Union have managed to get the initiative, and they charged forwards and caught the Confederate skirmishers. So that's going to be very bloody for the Confederates, as they are about to probably be destroyed. Cavalry have just charged the skirmishers, so they will destroy them, but they take casualties. How many do they take? 4. Oh, nice. And the second unit takes 4 also. Those skirmishers put up a good last stand. So at the end of turn 2, that was definitely a Union phase. The cavalry rode down and destroyed all the skirmishers. They did take a few casualties, but nothing too terrible. Worse for them was having ridden down the skirmishers, they then came face to face with formed infantry and an artillery piece who pretty well destroyed them. We'll have to take a morale check to see if they survive or whether they flee. But overall, definitely a Union turn. Cavalry versus artillery. Does 1 point of damage. Infantry versus cavalry, 3 points of damage. Artillery on infantry does 3. Infantry versus infantry, 2. And second infantry versus infantry, 4. Nice. So turn 3 saw a little bit of the same. The Union cavalry did rout after being blasted, however the commander is with them, so we're hoping that they will rally. The second squadron did get across the stream and are making a beeline to try and cut off the Confederates, and the Union infantry is starting to form up. One of their companies is trying to cross the stream, whilst the other is just forming up ready to go toe to toe. So saw a few casualties on both sides, but nothing too devastating at all. That's 2 points Confederate artillery versus Union infantry, and Confederate infantry versus Union cav. It's 4 points of damage. That's a devastating volley. So turn 4 did see the Confederates withdraw slightly up the road, trying to protect themselves from getting cut off by the cavalry. Infantry started to cross the bridge, and the second unit did cross the stream, and our overall commander was able to rally the cavalry, and so they're starting to come back up. Next turn the Confederates will see a unit of reinforcements coming down the road. They've heard the guns and they're marching to the sound of them. So will they be able to last? That's the question. Infantry versus infantry. That's 3. Infantry returning fire. That's 2. Artillery versus artillery. That's 1 point of damage. Artillery versus cav. That's 1 point of damage. So turn 5 was an interesting one. The Confederates do have their reinforcements coming up the road. They decided they would withdraw slightly. The Union cavalry, who were flanking, did come down but were blasted at pretty well point blank range, and it was enough to destroy them. The infantry have crossed the river, and this unit is heading up into the hills slightly to try and get some enfilading fire, and the reformed cavalry have caught up again. To the benefit of the Union, they have had their reinforcement for today, being an artillery piece, has arrived also. So we'll see what happens next. Infantry versus infantry. That's 3. Infantry returning fire. That's 2. Union artillery versus Confederate artillery. 3 minus 1 for range gives us 2. Confederate artillery versus Union cavalry. 3 points of damage, minus 1 for range, so 2 points. So turn 6 saw the Confederates gain the initiative, which they used to pull back and try and start to form a defensive position. Union forces carried on pushing along, this unit moving to the left to try and flank up into the woods, everyone else moving straight down the centre, and the artillery piece bringing up the rear. This battle historically lasted, or went over 3 days. The first day is what we're seeing right now. Day 2 there was more manoeuvre but not really any fighting, and then on day 3 you had the Confederates do a counterattack, which we'll get to shortly. Union infantry versus Confederate infantry. There's 3. Second regiment. There's 3. Nice. Confederate infantry firing back. 3. 3. And 4. Ooh, that might have done them in. Artillery on infantry. That's 3. Infantry versus infantry. 2. And second infantry versus infantry. 4. Nice. Turn 7 went back to Union initiative, and their infantry kept pushing up on the left. Cavalry advanced, not a full move, but just to get into their carbine range so they can try and pepper the artillery piece. However, the Confederate, I think they were the 2nd Texans, I can't remember who they were supposed to be, but they did break this turn, so they have withdrawn slightly. Hopefully they can be rallied, and we'll see what happens next. But it was a bit of a painful turn for the Confederates overall. We shall see what happens in turn 8. This turn the Confederates were lucky their regiment rallied, and they formed their final line of defence. Now this is the last turn, we're saying, for the first day of the battle. The Union cavalry stopped their pursuit because they did get messed up a little bit last turn. They didn't break and they weren't destroyed, but they're perilously close. The Union infantry have taken a little bit of damage, but overall they're still in pretty good shape. So, overall, a turn which inflicted some casualties, but nothing too major. The Confederates are still holding their position. So as I said, on the second day of the battle, historically not a huge amount happened because the Union were doing a flanking manoeuvre. So what I've allowed is both sides to reposition a few units, but nothing too major. So the Confederates have got 2 new regiments come on, and they've just formed themselves up into a bit more of a battle line. The Union swung their infantry down onto the road slightly more and pulled back their cav, and the artillery was pushed forwards onto the bridge. Infantry versus infantry. There's 3. Infantry returning fire. There's 2. Artillery on infantry. There's 3. Infantry versus infantry. 2. And second infantry versus infantry. 4. Nice. Turn 1 of day 3. So the Confederates have come on, as I said, with their reinforcements and are doing a headlong charge to try and drive back the Union from the positions that they took 2 days prior. The Union forces are now outnumbered, quite drastically so. They've pushed forwards the wounded, damaged cavalry unit just to try and get a few extra guns to bear, whilst the rest of the force is going to slowly but surely try and withdraw backwards. Artillery on infantry. That's 3. Infantry versus infantry. 2. And second infantry versus infantry. 4. Nice. So turn 2 saw the Confederates coming on. They poured volleys into the Union and caused some pretty bad casualties to them, but not enough to break or rout any of their units, although the cavalry, I'm not sure quite how they're still going, they're so damaged. However, in return, the cav and the artillery did fire upon the Confederate unit on the far flank and destroyed them. So, good going for the Union this turn, not so good for the Confederates. We'll see what turn 3 has to show. Artillery on infantry. That's 3. Infantry versus infantry. 2. And second infantry versus infantry. 4. Artillery versus cav. Does 1 point of damage. Turn 3 was very bloody for both sides. The Union cavalry was withdrawing, took a cannonball, or several, which destroyed them as they were crossing the bridge. The Union infantry gave as good as they got and are still standing, but they are severely wounded. You could say they're very bloodied at the moment, and I doubt they'll stand another turn, but still going strong. The Confederates are still pushing on. They haven't taken too many casualties overall, so the chaps in red did have a little bit of a shake when their compadres did break the previous turn, but they didn't rout themselves, so that was okay. Artillery on infantry. That's 3. Infantry versus infantry. 2. So this turn we had 2 regiments of Confederate infantry volley into the right-hand Union regiment and just obliterated them, completely destroyed. This regiment is going to have to take a morale check for loss of ally, but also they just took a volley and an artillery shot which damaged them pretty badly. Confederates, on the other hand, minor casualties from musketry fire. The Red Jackets did just take some cannon blasts, which would cause them to have to take a morale check also. And our Union infantry have broken, so their commander, leading by example, is leading them off the field. Confederates infantry passed their morale check, so I am going to say overall this is a Confederate major victory. The artillery piece will be knocked out shortly by combined artillery and rifle shooting. So yeah, Confederate victory. Of these regiments here, the Reds, they are probably 1 volley away from being destroyed. Central Regiment is actually pretty strong still, they didn't take much damage. And the guys on the left here are at 50% strength, so yeah, it was a bloody game for both sides, but the Confederates managed to pull it off. Interestingly, the results are quite similar to those that happened historically. You should definitely check out the video by Warhawk. He does a blow-by-blow animated battle report, so that's definitely worth a watch.